Welcome back, Honors. So today we started off with our new unit. We were talking about Rome, right? We were talking about its early establishments, the differences slightly between or the geography of Greece and that of Italy. Always remember really quickly that it's the geography of Italy, not the geography of Rome, because Rome got to be so large it incorporated the geography of several other modern-day countries like Spain, France, Germany, even England, right? So a lot of different things like that we got to keep talking about, but let's go ahead and get into it. That's right, I didn't say it, Susie. Italy was also protected to the north by mountains. Other than just being protected by the cliffs that went into the ocean, the mountain ranges of the Apennines and the Alps also definitely helped out with their protection in their fledgling state, right? So the Alps especially, because they were very hard to traverse, very, very elevated, and usually snow-capped throughout the year. The Apennines, though, they run the length of the Italian boot, particularly that one of the west coast. So very, very protective, helped out a lot, and also remember very few natural harbors. And this is what I was talking about. So Greece being in pink and the blue areas being that they colonized. This is what I was getting at, that the Greeks were famous for colonizing it, and they used up most of the natural harbors that existed in Italy going forward before the establishment of Rome. But let's keep going. Now, of course, many of you know the myth of how Rome was founded, right? So in Virgil's Aeneid, ooh, you should write that down. Virgil, all right? Virgil was a Roman poet we'll actually get to when we talk about the Pax Romana, and his book was called the Aeneid, A-E-N-I-E-D, the Aeneid. And in the Aeneid, he discusses the idea, like the founding myth of Rome, how Rome was founded, and a lot of their cultural standards, right? Well, this is the founding myth of Rome. So what had happened, apparently, was two twin sons were born to a woman named Rhea Silvia, right? So Rhea Silva, who apparently there was a prophecy foretold that her brother was actually going to try and, he was going to be overthrown by two heirs to the throne, right? And so he thought it was the twins, and so he told some servants to take the twins out and kill them. Well, the servants took pity on them and abandoned them next to the Tiber River. So after they were abandoned, they were adopted by a she-wolf named Lupa, right? And she actually nursed them to health. This is a very famous part of the story, the children being nursed to health by the she-wolf. Then what's going to happen, unlike many Disney stories that you think, they're going to be adopted by an older peasant man and his wife, who they're going to be able to, who they're going to teach and raise them as their own children, just like the story of Hercules. Oh, their father, also speaking of Hercules, is a possibility in Roman mythology that their father was Hercules or the Roman god Mars, right, which is the god of war. And then, after being raised to being full adults, they then killed their uncle, reinstated the rightful heir to the throne, and then went off to establish their city of Rome. Well, then there was some quarreling going on between the two of them over who would rule Rome, because the prophecy said, you will raise your city on a land where you see hawks circling above. And they did, and there were hawks circling above these 7 hills of Rome. Seven hills, write that down, very important. Then, trying to decide who was actually going to be king, Romulus and Remus are their names, by the way. Romulus and Remus. Romulus, R-O-M-U-L-U-S, and then Remus, R-E-E-M-U-S. Over deciding who would actually rule over this new city. Romulus is going to commit fratricide, which is killing your brother. Fratricide. He's going to murder his brother and stab him to death and become the first rightful king of Rome. Okay, so a lot of other stories that we know. Cain and Abel. We know a lot of different stories about fratricide. We also know a lot of different stories about the destiny of a young person actually rising up and taking rightful throne or rightful title back, like the stories of Zeus and many other Greek myths, right? Well, in real life, what actually happened, the real founders, was actually a small group of people called Latins that made these stupid little huts. Now, anyway, so the Latins were the actual first settlers of Rome. So the Latins actually showed up, and what language do you think they spoke? Nice job. All right, anyway, so Latin, right? They're a group of Indo-Europeans, I-N-D-O Europeans. We'll talk about their language tree a little bit tomorrow. Don't let me forget that. Don't write a little note. Hey, Mr. Terry, don't forget the language tree. I'm going to draw it. It's really, really cool. So anyway, the Latins were the very, very first settlers of this area of Italy, right? Well, a small group of them is going to break away, and they're going to actually found what they called Rome, and they began to call themselves Romans, right? So Rome was founded by a small group of Latins that had broken away from an original settlement, okay? Now, entering into where they founded it and why, Rome was founded on a hill overlooking the Tiber River. So the Tiber River is actually the most important artery to Rome. Write that down real quick. Tiber River, T-I-B-E-R, circle it a couple times, or underline it, or highlight it, or whatever. So Tiber River is the one that's actually going to carry a lot of that nutrient-rich volcanic ash. It's going to carry a lot of that nutrient-rich silt, making the farmlands around in the nearby areas very good for farming. And the settlement actually grew to cover 7 separate hills. And the reason why they founded it on hills was to actually protect from the wet season flooding from about November to April. All right? Now, continuing forward, though, but nearby, there was another group of people that have become very culturally dominant in the area. They're called the Etruscans, right? So, really, really quick, though, this is a picture of the Tiber River that I actually took while I was in Italy, and this is in November, and as you can see, the river is very high, right? And this is my wife doing a headstand on one of the hills of Rome. So, this is Palatine Hill that she's doing a headstand on. She was doing it on this hill. And these are the 7 hills of Rome, right? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 7-ish, 7. There. Anyway, now, on one side of the Tiber River, overlooking it. So this is the original lay of the first century Roman settlement. Now, the Etruscans, though, were another group of people that actually existed nearby. So they created a large city-state north of Rome, okay? The Etruscan settlements north of Rome. Now, cool thing about Etruscans, though, is they traded with the Greeks early on. So, in this trading of Greeks, what happened? What happened? What's the word? Yes, Christelle, thank you. Cultural diffusion, right? So, cultural diffusion is going to play out, and the Etruscans are going to adopt a lot of the ideas or a lot of the customs that you would actually consider regularly Greek, right? So, like their mythology, like their construction, like their clothing, like the wreaths, like the music, like a lot of different things, okay? Now, keep going, though. They came up also with the ideas of the walls around Rome. And they ruled over Rome. Actually, they're going to take Rome over, and they're going to rule over Rome from 753 BC to 509 BC. Now, also, write this down. Don't forget to let Mr. Terry tell you the myth of why the Etruscans left and how the Romans actually took them over. All right? So, anyway, going forward, though, most of the things that you know are so the Romans are going to expel the Etruscans, and they're going to become their own state. All right? So, but most of the things that you know as being Roman, they're actually more Etruscan things. So, for example, togas are Etruscan. The alphabet, the Roman alphabet that we actually use now today, and the one that most of modern Europe uses due to this cultural diffusion, is actually an Etruscan alphabet. And also one other really cool thing is called the fasces, right? And this is the fasces right here. F-A-S-C-E-S. This is actually a Etruscan symbol that they would carry in front of their strongest military generals and their king to try and show his power and dominance. It's wooden rods surrounding a broad axe, right? Showing his ability to kill those who ever stood in his way. The fasces, F-A-S-C-E-S, or F-A-S-C-E-S. So, anyway, but Roman conquest of Italy is going to break out as well, because Rome's going to fight several small wars and begin to conquer several small areas surrounding their original settlement, right? So, one famous story is actually about the very first supreme dictator general of Rome, right? We'll get into the dictator and his obligations of Rome a little bit later on, but his name was Cincinnatus, right? So, apparently Cincinnatus was just a simple farmer, right? And an actual, a simple farmer, but very well-respected warrior, right? So, apparently when the Achaemenid people were actually attacking and threatening to take over Rome, this is actually probably a myth, but, we still think it's cool. They walked up to Cincinnatus while he was farming, and they were like, Cincinnatus, sir, we need you to lead the military. We need you to take over the control of the city-state and actually expel these people. And apparently Cincinnatus just wiped the sweat off of his brow, flicked it off, walked off, beat the Achaemenid in 15 days, and then afterwards he resigned his position and continued to farm and gave rule back to the people of Rome, right? He is the premier example of what a Roman dictator should be. So you can see right here, this is his plow, and that is the fasces, right? And that is a statue of the Cincinnatus. Inspiration for the city of Cincinnati, Ohio, right? So anyway, now keep going though. Then there's going to be the Gaul invasion, right? So now we're going to talk about how the Gaul invasion tomorrow actually blew up and actually kind of took Rome in the direction of being the strong, independent city-state that you know of when you think of Rome, right? So the invasion by the Gauls actually led to their military dominance, okay? Because the barbarians are going to come in, and they're going to invade Rome in 506 BC, and they're going to sack the place. We're going to discuss that a little bit later on. We're going to talk about the most epic mic drop of all time. tomorrow, and yeah, we'll get into it then. So I will see you guys later on. Honors, have a great evening. Go Irish, beat Eustace, let's go.